The quantum sensors detected them first. In the depths of Europa Station's monitoring center, Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display with a mix of anticipation and concern. The incoming vessels were massive, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built, and they were approaching from the direction of the Carina Nebula. How many? Admiral James Rodriguez asked, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of the tactical displays. 27 capital ships, sir. Their energy signatures suggest advanced fusion drives, but Sarah paused, double-checking her readings. They're remarkably inefficient, almost as if they never needed to worry about power conservation. The Admiral nodded slowly. He'd been preparing for this moment for the past 15 years, ever since humanity's quantum observation network had first detected signs of interstellar civilization. While Earth appeared primitive to outside observers, a planet still struggling with internal conflicts and environmental challenges, it was all carefully orchestrated deception. The truth was far different. Humanity had achieved technological breakthroughs that would seem impossible to most spacefaring races, but they had kept them hidden, building their defenses in secret while maintaining a facade of technological adolescence. Time to contact, Rodriguez asked, his voice steady. At their current velocity, they'll reach lunar orbit in approximately 72 hours, Sarah replied, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Their scan patterns suggest they're conducting preliminary reconnaissance. They likely think we can't detect them yet. Rodriguez allowed himself a small smile. The approaching fleet had no idea that quantum entanglement sensors had been tracking them since they entered the solar system. While their ships were impressive by conventional standards, they relied heavily on technology that humanity had long since surpassed. Alert all Phase Zero installations, Rodriguez commanded. Maintain surface appearances, but bring the orbital defense grid to full readiness. And Sarah, he turned to the scientist, make sure our visitors get a good look at those old chemical rockets we keep flying around. Let them think they've got us figured out. Throughout the solar system, hidden facilities began to stir. Beneath the surfaces of Mars, Europa, and Titan, automated factories that had been running for decades continued their work. In the asteroid belt, seemingly abandoned mining operations concealed state-of-the-art manufacturing centers. And in high orbit, thousands of satellites that appeared to be simple communications relays contained technologies that would reshape the visitors' understanding of what humanity was capable of. Sir, Sarah called out, her voice tighter than before, I'm detecting active scanning from their lead vessels. They're using basic EM spectrum analysis. Nothing that would detect our quantum tech. Perfect, Rodriguez replied. Give them exactly what they expect to see. Let's make sure our visitors feel nice and confident about their technological superiority. The next 48 hours were a carefully choreographed dance of deception. Earth continued its daily routines. Commercial satellites maintained their predictable orbits. Space stations carried on with their seemingly primitive activities, and radio chatter filled the airways with the mundane communications of a species just beginning to venture beyond its atmosphere. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility known only to a handful of individuals, the true heart of Earth's defense force waited. The quantum fleet, ships that could manipulate space-time itself, remained hidden, their existence unknown to even most of humanity. They were the product of a scientific revolution that had occurred decades ago, when researchers discovered that the universe's fundamental laws were far more flexible than anyone had imagined. As the alien fleet drew closer, their confidence was evident in their formation. They made no attempt to mask their approach or maintain tactical positioning. Why should they? Every scan they conducted confirmed what they expected to find. A young civilization, barely able to reach its own moon, rich in resources and ripe for conquest. Admiral Rodriguez stood in the command center, watching the approaching armada with the calm demeanor of someone who knew they held the stronger hand. Send word to all commands, he ordered. Operation Looking Glass is now active. Let's show our visitors why humanity learned to be subtle about its achievements. The trap was set. Now it was just a matter of waiting for the perfect moment to spring it. The coming hours would teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Appearances can be deceiving, and humanity was anything but primitive. In high orbit, the first of the alien vessels began their final approach, their weapons charging in preparation for what they assumed would be a swift and decisive victory. They had no way of knowing they were about to encounter a civilization that had mastered physics they hadn't even theorized yet. The game was about to begin, and humanity was playing for keeps. Grand Admiral Xelfor stood on the command deck of the Hegemony flagship, Eternal Dominion, his 4 eyes fixed on the blue-green world filling the main viewport. Behind him, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements reflecting centuries of unchallenged superiority across 1,000 star systems. Analysis complete, Grand Admiral, announced First Observer Rika, her crystalline appendages shimming with data streams. The species calls themselves humans. Their technological level is precisely what our long-range scans indicated: primitive fusion reactors, chemical propulsion, and basic particle weapons. They haven't even achieved practical quantum communications. Xelfor's upper lip curled in what passed for a smile among his species. Their response to our presence: "They're scrambling their defensive forces now, sir. Mostly atmospheric aircraft and a handful of orbital platforms. Their communications channels are filled with panic. Several of their nation-states are arguing about how to respond." The Grand Admiral had seen this scenario play out countless times before. A young species, suddenly confronted with the reality of their cosmic insignificance, desperately trying to mount a defense with woefully inadequate technology. It almost made him feel sorry for them. Almost. "Begin standard conquest protocol," he ordered. "Disable their primary military installations and communication networks. I want their surrender within 6 hours." The first wave of Hegemony fighters deployed from the fleet's hangars, their energy weapons charging as they entered Earth's atmosphere. On the tactical displays, human military installations appeared as primitive clusters of technology, their defensive capabilities barely worth noting. That's when the first fighter disappeared. "Sir," Rika's voice carried an unusual note of confusion. "We've lost contact with Striker Group 7. Before Xelfor could respond, 3 more fighter groups vanished from the tactical display. No explosions, no debris, no emergency signals. They simply ceased to exist. "Impossible," he muttered. "Run a full spectrum analysis. Check for sensor malfunctions." The response came not from his crew, but from the void itself. Space seemed to ripple like heat waves over desert sand, and suddenly the Hegemony fleet's sophisticated sensor networks went blind. Every scanner, every detection system, every observation device simultaneously failed. In the ensuing darkness, something moved. When the sensors came back online 3 seconds later, 5 Hegemony destroyers were missing from the formation. The remaining ship's crews reported seeing nothing. No weapons fire, no enemy vessels, nothing but that strange ripple in space itself. All ships, battle formations. Xelfor roared, his confidence giving way to the first stirrings of fear. Deploy temporal shields. Activate all defensive systems. But the temporal shields, technology that had protected Hegemony ships from every known weapon for the past millennium, might as well have been tissue paper. Whatever was attacking them simply ignored them completely. A new signal cut through the chaos of the Hegemony's command channels. The voice that spoke was calm, almost casual. "This is Admiral James Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. Your analysis of our capabilities was flawed, Grand Admiral Xelfor. Would you like to reconsider your approach to first contact?" Xelfor's secondary heart nearly stopped. The human knew his name, knew his rank. Somehow they had been watching, listening, gathering intelligence while appearing primitive and helpless. "Impossible," he whispered again, but with less conviction. "We are the Hegemony. We have ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Your species was living in caves when we first split the atom. 10,000 years." Rodriguez's voice carried a note of amusement. "That's impressive. We've only been at this for about a century. But you see, Grand Admiral, we took a different approach. While you were conquering worlds, we were learning to bend reality itself. While you were building bigger ships, we were discovering how to step outside space-time. Your 10,000 years of progress. They're impressive, but they're also linear. We decided to take a few shortcuts. As if to emphasize the point, another ripple passed through space. This time, when the sensors cleared, the Eternal Dominion's entire escort wing had vanished, leaving the flagship alone and vulnerable. What? What are you? Selfor demanded, his voice barely a whisper. We're human, Rodriguez replied simply. And we learned long ago that the best way to survive in a hostile universe was to keep our true capabilities hidden until they were needed. Your fleet isn't destroyed, by the way. We've simply relocated them to a holding area near Neptune. They're quite safe, though I imagine their crews are rather confused right now. Selfor stared at the tactical display, his mind struggling to process what was happening. Everything he knew about technological progression, about the natural order of species development, about his own civilization's supremacy, it was all being systematically shattered. The choice is yours, Grand Admiral, Rodriguez continued. We can continue this demonstration, or we can start over. This time as equals. Though I suggest you update your diplomatic protocols. Attempted planetary conquest isn't the best way to say hello. For the first time in his 300-year career, Grand Admiral Selfor, Supreme Commander of the Hegemony's 7th Expansion Fleet, found himself completely at a loss for words. The primitives weren't primitives at all. They were something else entirely, something beyond his comprehension. And they had been watching, waiting, and preparing for this moment all along. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in Europa Station's Quantum Observatory, watching as the first images of Earth's true defensive capabilities reached the shocked Hegemony flagship. The facade was falling away now, piece by piece, like layers of an onion being methodically peeled back. Show them the Jupiter array, Admiral Rodriguez commanded, his voice carrying across the quantum-linked command network. In response, massive structures began emerging from what appeared to be empty space around Jupiter's orbit. The installations had always been there, hidden behind quantum camouflage fields that made them literally undetectable to conventional sensors. The Hegemony's sensors struggled to process what they were seeing. Each installation was larger than their greatest battleships, yet they had been completely invisible until now. The structures pulsed with exotic energies that defied conventional physics, their very existence challenging everything the aliens thought they knew about technology. Remarkable, isn't it? Sarah's voice carried across the communication channel to the Hegemony flagship. We discovered quite early that conventional technological development, bigger ships, stronger weapons, faster engines, was ultimately a dead end. The real breakthrough came when we started thinking outside normal spacetime. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, Grand Admiral Selfor watched in stunned silence as more revelations unfolded. Hidden bases emerged from within Mercury's corona, installations that should have been incinerated by the solar temperatures, but instead were drawing power directly from the star's quantum structure. Asteroid bases that had appeared to be simple mining operations revealed themselves as manufacturing centers that manipulated matter at the subatomic level. You see, Grand Admiral, Sarah continued, her tone professional but not unkind, we realized something fundamental about technological development. It's not about how far you go down a particular path. It's about finding entirely new paths to explore. When we detected your civilization's signals decades ago, we studied your development pattern. Impressive, but ultimately predictable. You kept making the same technologies bigger, better, more efficient. But you never questioned the underlying principles. As if to demonstrate her point, a small fleet of Earth vessels finally revealed themselves. They were tiny compared to the Hegemony's massive warships, each no larger than a terrestrial submarine. But as they moved, space itself seemed to bend around them. They didn't so much fly as slip between the fabric of reality, appearing and disappearing at will. We call them quantum ships, Admiral Rodriguez explained. They don't move through space in any conventional sense. They manipulate the quantum foam that underlies reality itself. Your temporal shields can't stop them because they operate on principles your civilization hasn't discovered yet. In the Europa Station's command center, Sarah pulled up a detailed analysis of the hegemony's technology. Your civilization achieved remarkable things, Grand Admiral. Your mastery of temporal mechanics, your energy weapons, your faster-than-light drives, they're all incredibly advanced. But they're all based on the same fundamental understanding of physics that you developed millennia ago. How? Selthor finally managed to ask. How did you advance so quickly? Necessity, Rodriguez answered simply. We knew we weren't alone in the universe. We knew that sooner or later we'd encounter other civilizations, and we knew that if we followed the conventional path of technological development, we'd always be playing catch-up. So we took a different approach. Sarah brought up a new display, showing the true extent of Earth's defensive network. Quantum relays that could instantly transmit information and matter across vast distances. Gravity manipulation systems that could redirect entire fleets without firing a shot. Technologies that didn't just push the boundaries of physics, they rewrote them entirely. We kept our true capabilities hidden, Rodriguez continued, because we observed how your civilization treated those you considered technologically inferior. We watched as you conquered world after world, always assuming that your way was the only way forward. We decided to let you keep believing that right up until the moment it became necessary to show you otherwise. The quantum sensors detected a surge of activity from the Hegemony flagship. They were attempting to transmit a warning signal to their home territory. The message never left the ship. Instead, it found itself caught in a quantum loop, endlessly cycling through a microscopic portion of space-time. That's another thing we discovered, Sarah added, almost apologetically. Information itself is far more malleable than your civilization realizes. The same principles that allow us to hide our technology let us control the flow of information at a quantum level. Your message isn't being blocked. It simply can't find a path through space-time that we haven't already adjusted. On the Eternal Dominion's bridge, Selthor sank into his command chair. Everything he had believed about his civilization's superiority, about the natural order of technological progression, about the very nature of reality itself, was being systematically dismantled before his eyes. What happens now? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. Now, Rodriguez replied, we have a real first contact discussion. As equals. Though perhaps with a better understanding of why appearances can be deceiving and why assuming technological superiority can be a dangerous mistake. Throughout the solar system, more of Earth's true face was revealing itself. A civilization that had taken a different path, one that had chosen to master the fundamental nature of reality rather than simply building bigger weapons. It was a revelation that would send shockwaves through the galaxy, once the hegemony was allowed to spread the word. But that would come later. For now, humanity had made its point. The galaxy would never be quite the same again. The next 48 hours transformed the solar system into a diplomatic powder keg. Near Neptune, the displaced hegemony ships hung in space, their crews watching in stunned silence as small human vessels maintained a lazy orbit around them. The ships weren't threatening. They didn't need to be. Their mere existence and the casual way they violated what the hegemony had thought were immutable laws of physics was threat enough. On board the Eternal Dominion, Grand Admiral Selthor found himself in an unprecedented situation. A peace conference with a species his civilization had intended to conquer. The human delegation had transported aboard instantly, simply stepping out of what looked like a ripple in the air. No shuttle, no atmospheric shields, no traditional life support. They just arrived. Your ships, Selthor began, trying to maintain his diplomatic composure, the ones holding my fleet near Neptune. How are they managing it? Admiral Rodriguez smiled. They're not ships in the way you understand them. Think of them more as local manifestations of quantum probability fields. They don't move through space. They adjust the likelihood of being in one location versus another. The scientific advisor to the Grand Admiral, a being named Kelvera whose species specialized in theoretical physics, looked like she might faint. That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical using conventional physics. Dr. Chen agreed. But we're not using conventional physics. We're not forcing reality to bend to our will. We're asking it nicely, and it obliges. The human delegation had set up a series of demonstrations. They showed how their quantum ships could traverse vast distances without actually moving through the intervening space. They demonstrated weapons that didn't destroy targets, but rather shifted them into parallel probability states where they had never existed. They revealed defensive systems that didn't deflect attacks, but rather increased the quantum probability of those attacks having already missed. This is why we maintained our deception, Rodriguez explained. We knew that if we revealed our true capabilities too soon, it would cause panic throughout the galaxy. Species would rush to develop similar technologies without understanding the fundamental principles. The results would have been catastrophic. In the depths of the eternal dominion, hegemony scientists were frantically analyzing the human technologies. But it was like giving stone tools to a quantum physicist and asking them to understand nuclear fusion. The conceptual gap was too vast to bridge quickly. Your civilization's path isn't wrong, Sarah added, seeing the frustration on the alien faces. You've achieved remarkable things. But you've been climbing a mountain, building on each previous achievement. We found a different mountain entirely. The implications were starting to sink in. The hegemony's 10,000 years of expansion had been based on technological superiority. But now they faced a civilization that had simply stepped around that entire paradigm. A species that didn't just have better technology, they had fundamentally different technology. There are others, Zelthor said suddenly, his voice quiet. Other species we've subjected to our authority. They will learn of this. They already have, Rodriguez replied calmly. While we've been talking, quantum observers have been deployed throughout hegemony space, not to threaten or interfere, just to watch, and to make sure the transition is peaceful. The Grand Admiral's secondary heart skipped a beat. What transition? The transition from a galaxy ruled by force to one guided by understanding. We're not interested in conquering the hegemony, Admiral. We're interested in teaching, sharing, helping other species find their own paths to advancement, even if those paths are different from ours. In the space around them, reality itself seemed to hum with possibility. The human ships continued their patrols, each one a testament to a different way of thinking about the universe. They weren't just machines. They were physical manifestations of a philosophy that said the impossible was merely the improbable viewed from the wrong angle. What do you want? Zelthor finally asked, the question that had been burning in his mind since this all began. Want? Rodriguez smiled. We want what we've always wanted, to explore, to learn, to grow. But we also want to make sure that the galaxy becomes a place where different approaches to understanding reality can coexist, where technological advancement doesn't automatically mean domination. A message flashed across the quantum network. More hegemony fleets were being diverted to the Sol system, not to attack, but to verify the incredible reports they were receiving. Humanity's revelation was spreading across the galaxy at quantum speeds, and with it, the realization that everything they thought they knew about technological progression was about to change. Your civilization stands at a crossroads, Sarah said gently. You can cling to your old understanding of reality, or you can join us in exploring what lies beyond it. The choice is yours, but know that the galaxy will never be quite the same either way. In the vast expanse of space around them, the stars seemed to twinkle with new meaning. The universe wasn't just stranger than they had imagined, it was stranger than they could have imagined. And humanity, the supposedly primitive species they had come to conquer, had been quietly mastering its mysteries all along. 1 year after humanity's revelation, The galaxy was undergoing changes that would have been unimaginable to the hegemony's leaders just months before. The Great Hall of Europa Station hosted representatives from 300 different species, some former subjects of the hegemony, others independent civilizations drawn by the rumors of a power that had reshaped their understanding of what was possible. Admiral Rodriguez stood at the observation window, watching as ships of various designs moved through the space around Earth. Some still used conventional drives, others were beginning to experiment with primitive quantum technologies, and a few, under careful human supervision, were taking their first steps into probability manipulation. The Artemis Initiative is proceeding as planned, Dr. Chen reported, joining him at the window. 27 species have shown particular aptitude for quantum mechanics. Another 43 are developing promising alternative approaches we hadn't considered. The initiative, named after humanity's return to the moon, was their solution to introducing advanced technology to the galaxy without causing chaos. Rather than simply handing over quantum drive blueprints, they were teaching civilizations to find their own paths to advancement. And the hegemony? Rodriguez asked, though he already knew the answer. Adapting surprisingly well. Sarah smiled. Grand Admiral Excelthor has been instrumental in the transition. Once he understood we weren't interested in replacing their empire with our own, he became one of our strongest advocates. In the distance, a hegemony research vessel was conducting experiments with a human quantum observer team. The once mighty conquerors had discovered something they valued more than power: knowledge. Their centuries of technological development, rather than being rendered obsolete, provided a crucial foundation for understanding new principles. There was a discussion in the council this morning, Sarah continued, about the other galaxies we've detected. Some of the younger species are eager to explore. Rodriguez nodded slowly. And what did you tell them? The truth, that we detected other galactic civilizations decades ago, but we chose to focus on our own galaxy first. That there are mysteries out there that even we don't understand yet, and that maybe, together, we're ready to start exploring them. In the Great Hall behind them, representatives from formerly warring species were engaged in passionate discussions about physics, philosophy, and the nature of reality itself. The quantum technology that humanity had developed wasn't just changing how civilizations traveled through space, it was changing how they thought about their place in the universe. A small commotion drew their attention. A group of younger hegemony scientists was excitedly sharing their latest findings with representatives from a species they had once conquered. The hierarchy of technological superiority that had dominated galactic politics for millennia was giving way to something new, a collaborative approach to understanding the universe's deepest mysteries. They're calling it the Great Awakening, Sarah said, gesturing to the assembled beings. Not because we showed them new technology, but because we showed them there were different ways to think about technology itself. Rodriguez watched as a holographic display in the center of the hall showed the latest data from the Andromeda Observation Project. Quantum sensors had detected civilizations there too, some possibly as advanced as the hegemony had been, others still taking their first steps into space. Do you ever wonder, he asked, if we should have revealed ourselves sooner? Sarah shook her head. We needed time to understand our own discoveries, to make sure we could teach them responsibly, to be ready for this moment. In orbit above them, the quantum ships that had so shocked the hegemony a year ago were now commonplace sights, their reality-bending capabilities no longer causing panic but inspiring innovation. Several species had already developed their own unique approaches to quantum manipulation, creating technologies that even humanity hadn't conceived of. The hegemony taught us something important, Rodriguez mused. They showed us what happens when advancement follows a single path. When progress is measured only by how far you've gone, rather than how many different ways you can go. A flash of light announced the arrival of a new delegation, representatives from a civilization at the galaxy's core that had, until now, remained isolated. They stepped out of their quantum corridor with the uncertainty of newcomers, but the eagerness of those ready to join something greater than themselves. We're receiving signals from other galaxies now, Sarah said quietly. Real signals, not just observations. They've noticed our quantum activity. They're curious. Rodriguez smiled. Then we'll do what humanity does best. We'll learn, we'll teach, and we'll explore. Together. The great hall hummed with the energy of countless species, each bringing their own perspective to humanity's great revelation. The galaxy was entering a new age, not one of conquest or technological superiority, but of infinite paths forward, each valid, each valuable, each adding to the grand tapestry of universal understanding. And somewhere, in the quantum foam that underlaid reality itself, the universe seemed to smile at the creatures that had finally learned to ask it nicely for its secrets, rather than trying to tear them from it by force. The adventure, it seemed, was just beginning.